Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is July 9th, 2024 at 4:30 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh,
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts,
Here.
Councilman Overton,
Here.
Councilman Whitlock,
Here.
Councilwoman Strader,
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. First item up is adoption of the agenda.
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh,
we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion second to adopt the agenda as presented. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh,
that we approve the consent agenda for the mayor to sign and the clerk to attest.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There were no items moved from the consent agenda. So we'll move on to our Department Commission reports. First up is item 21, which is a public hearing for program year 2024 Community Development Block Grant. We'll open this public hearing with comments from Crystal.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Sorry. So tonight is for our action plan for the program year that starts October 21st of this year and continues through September 30th of 2025. We have a couple of different planning documents for this. So we have our 5-year consolidated plan each 5 years. Then we go out to the community and work with them to identify what the needs are. And then we use those assessments to develop goals for our next 5 years. Our current plan is from 2022 to 2026. And then the second guiding document is our action plan, which we do every year. And this details the specific projects that we intend to fund. And it's also our application to funding or for funding to HUD. We do reach out for community involvement several times throughout the year. The first one for this action plan was when we were getting ready to develop the plan. We wanted to work with the community to see what services they wanted to see funded this year. So we were taking public comments from March 15th to April 7th. And during this time, we had a feedback survey. We had community partners we were working with. And then we also did a few different in-person interactions, which included 2 public hearings, an open house, and we had a booth at the Do the Right event. We used this information to reach out to different public service providers and ask that they complete applications. Then those went through the application process and the scoring committee selected several projects to fund. So those are included in this draft action plan. And we're reaching out to the public again to see if the plan kind of meets the needs of the community and if they have any feedback on it. So our public comment period for this opened on June 11th and will close on July 17th. We again have a feedback survey and we worked with our community partners. And we also sent a letter to our neighbors that might be impacted by any of the construction projects, asking them to provide feedback as well. We've had multiple in-person interactions again, including this public hearing. And then we've had 2 open houses and we were also at the Boys and Girls Club for a parent pickup. Our open houses, we held one at City Hall and then I think it was a week later, we held another one at the Meridian Library. And here we provided information on the CDBG program, what it is, and which projects were selected, how much we were intending to fund, and we had that information in English and Spanish. We also had, you can see in the picture, there's the sheets of paper where people could say whether or not they supported those projects. So it was a green sticker if they did and a red sticker if they did not. And we had, throughout the entire event, we had one person put a red sticker on the walkability project, but everything else was green. Also at the open house and the Boys and Girls Club, we asked people what their community looks like and they drew a picture of that on the puzzle pieces and we put this together. So it shows just the diversity of our community. And this is actually on display on the 3rd floor. So if anybody wants to go check it out, it'll be there through the month of July. We have our feedback survey that's open through July 17th, but I looked at the information through yesterday so that you guys could get a general feel of what the public was saying. we asked people to rate the projects on a scale of 1 to 5. And so the first one was the importance of emergency rental assistance for housing stability, childcare scholarships to support families, homeowner repairs to improve housing stability, and better walkways to improve safety and accessibility. And as you can see, everybody is rating them for the most part above a 4, with the homeowner repairs being about a 3.5. We also asked people to rate if the projects meet the current needs, which was a 3.8, and if the projects will have a lasting impact, which was, so far it's a 3.6. For our year 3 action plan, the amount HUD has said we're going to receive is $524,378. Of this, we're proposing about 10% of it goes toward admin and fair housing, 15% towards services, 31% toward housing, and 45% for infrastructure. For admin and fair housing, it looks like about $50,500, and activities will include a fair housing campaign, and then most of it will go toward the general administration of the program. For public services, there were 2 projects that were selected. The first is emergency rental assistance through Jesse Tree, which provides temporary rental assistance for people who are at risk of losing their housing. And the second one is Boys and Girls Club scholarships. And this provides access to child care through the Boys and Girls Club, and it includes extended care and summer programs. For housing, NeighborWorks Boise's homeowner repair program was selected. This provides weatherization, accessibility, and emergency repairs. And the final project is Better Walkways, which improves sidewalk and lighting in areas that were identified in our CDBG walkability study. We have several different projects identified here. They were broken out based on how much we think they're going to cost and how much CDBG funding we anticipate having. So the first 2 projects we feel like we'll have enough funding for. The first one is Northwest 3rd, and there's a section of Northwest 7th, which is right over by Meridian Middle. And if we have funding that needs to be reallocated, or these projects come in less than we think they will, then we'll continue with the next 2 phases of Northwest 7th. And if we still have funding after that, or if any of these projects are unable to go through, then we would work on the West Maple Street. As I said, our public comment period opened on June 11th, and we have our public hearing tonight, and the public comment period will close on July 17th. The final report, after everything's done, then I'll put all of the comments, the summaries and everything in there, any changes that need to be made, and I'll have that along with a resolution on your July 23rd consent agenda. And once that's approved by all of you, then I'll get it submitted to HUD by the end of July. If anybody has any questions about the program or anything, they can reach out to me, Crystal Campbell, at ccampbell@meridiancity.org or 208-489-0575. And with that, I'll stand for questions.
Thank you, Crystal. Council, any questions for staff?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
not so much a question as a comment. I was lucky enough to participate in this process on picking some of these programs this year, and my hat's off to Crystal and all the hard work she did. She had a very large and diverse group of people that helped score these projects and choose these for the future of what this is going to be. And I was just absolutely happy to be a part of that. When I look at this, I see such a diverse group of projects and where it reaches out into our community and affects so many different people. I think it's been done wonderfully. I think you've done a great job.
Thank you, Councilman. I know Crystal appreciates it. She can speak for herself. I don't have to do that for her, but do appreciate those comments. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone signed up to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we did not.
Okay, this is a public hearing. Is there anybody present, either in the audience or online, who would like to provide testimony on this item? If you're online, you can use the raise your hand feature, but it looks like we just have 2 staff online, so probably not going to do that. Anybody from the audience? Seeing none. Crystal, was your intention to leave the public hearing open or to try to close since you're bringing a resolution in 2 weeks?
I was intending to close it.
Council, thoughts on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I guess Crystal, to bring a resolution back in 2 weeks, you'd need it to close tonight as opposed to next week.
No, not necessarily. We're still accepting public comments through the 17th. So it could stay open longer if you were wanting it to.
Mr. Neri. Gonna let the great Dave Zaremba and ask you a sideways question. Could the council take an action tonight to close the public hearing on the 17th? We can move to close the public hearing on the 17th, or do we need to wait for that meeting to occur before we close the hearing?
Mr. Members of council member, the only reason I would suggest the latter is simply in case something were to happen, couldn't hold the meeting on the 17th.
Okay.
So we've made it clear that when they're allowed, but I don't see the logic to close it before that day.
Well, and it would be the 16th, this next
16th
week's
would be-
meeting. So it's
Oh.
still the day before she accepts public comment. So I think the real question is the 20, you'd want to leave it open until the 23rd. Does that create any problems if you were to accept public testimony through the 23rd?
And Mr. Mayor, I think that's where my question was coming from. If we've said we're going to accept comments after our next hearing, but without closing the public hearing to provide time for the resolution, I feel like that we're a little bit out of sequence here, and I want to meet the deadline that Crystal has. I guess, Mr. Mayor, I don't know the best way to do that. If we've communicated we're going to take comments till the 17th, I assume that necessitates leaving the public hearing open.
Yes.
And then if Crystal wants to come back on the 21st, 22nd, I don't have my calendar in front of me, the
23rd.
following week,
23rd.
23rd, how we would best do that? Is it just then for us to take that action to close the public hearing on the 17th, even though we won't be here on the 17th to close it?
Well, I think unless, and I'm trying to think of timing, and maybe Crystal might be able to guide that. I mean, we can certainly bring forward a resolution on the 23rd, take all the comment till the 17th has been directed, with direction to simply bring back that resolution on the 23rd. Crystal will take everything from the 17th, be able to report that back to the council with a resolution on the 23rd. And I think we've met the requirements of the federal guidelines, so I think we're okay.
I think the only question is, do you want the public comments to be included in the public hearing record? Because they are two separate. So that's really the question mark, is do we leave this open for 1 week and take any additional comments next week? Or irregardless of that, since they'll go into the federal side? And I'm looking at Councilman Kaplan,
Yeah.
because I know this has been your issue over the years.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I appreciate that, and I guess I hate doing this, but I almost say let's punt for a week. Bring back a recommendation for when we would need to close the public hearing. I do like leaving the public hearing open as long as possible, but I don't want to hinder operations. And so where we've got a date that we're taking public comments after the date of our city council meeting, for me, it puts a little out of sync. So I guess I would just look for a recommendation to come back from staff next week about when they would like us to close the public hearing.
Mr. Mayor?
Crystal?
So it's not actually due until, I think it's August 16th, the 15th or 16th. So I actually do have a little bit of extra time. I just like to make sure everything's in order and get it in ahead of time. So if you would all feel more comfortable, then we could close it on the 23rd, and I could have everything ready with the resolution and everything. And then if we need to push it out a little bit further, if something changes in there, then I can always do that and come back the following week with the resolution.
Well, Mr. Mayor. yeah.
Now over here for this
We've
one.
we've got our clerk who is following our calendar that we don't have a meeting in the end of July or the first week of August.
Correct. After August, or after July 23rd, the next meeting would be August 13th.
So how, can we shoot for having everything wrapped up by the 23rd, one way or the other from the city's perspective?
Makes sense to me, as long as that works for.
Yeah, I mean, even if we close the public hearing next week and she takes comment for one additional day, I don't think, again, it doesn't impact our process.
Okay.
That's the federal process, but it's how long do you want the public to comment to you all?
Makes sense. All right,
So,
correct. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
okay,
Nice and lucky.
Mr. Willock. There you go.
Is there a difference between a public hearing, which we opened tonight, and a public comment period, which has been open for a week? Are we conflating the two together? This is a noticed public hearing tonight that we opened. Can we close it tonight and continue with the public comment period and not affect the application?
Correct. These are bifurcated. They don't, neither one has anything to do with the other. in that context. So you could, Councilman Cavanagh tends to like to leave it open for longer for people to comment. Otherwise, we normally we could have done this, not taking comment and closed it and been done and still done the public comment required under the federal side.
Mr. Mayor, maybe just.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Because I agree and appreciate Mary kind of indulging my desire to keep this open. I think it is largely because while they are two separate things from a governmental process, from a citizen process, they don't see it as two separate actions. They see it as a way for them to communicate to their elected representatives their feelings about these particular projects. I like to try and keep them as wide open as consistently as possible.
We'll come back with this, continue the public hearing when we get a motion to next week. That's what I would recommend from council. And close the public hearing next week for the public purpose, not the federal purpose. With that, do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
I move that we continue the public hearing for program year 2024 to July the 16th.
Second.
A motion, a second, to continue the public hearing to July 16th. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is continued. Thank you, Crystal. Okay, next up is item 22, which is fiscal year 2025 water and sewer rate increase proposal. And just as Lorelei comes up, just a FYI to council, a recommendation from two of our directors today was to not do shut-offs based upon the weather that's occurring here in the community. So tomorrow would have been a normal shut-off turn-off day that has been canceled at this point in time.
Appreciate the directors on that and you.
All right, thanks, Mayor and Council. So tonight is just an informational presentation, so I'm not asking for any action tonight, but basically wanted to start the process and start the conversation. So first, to give you a little bit of history on what kind of rate increases we have done over the past 10 years. So they've been few and far between, and that's a good thing. In 2014, we did a 2% rate increase, and we also implemented the $3.75 monthly EPA fee. That was a 10-year fee, expected to sunset this year. The great news is it worked as it was intended, and we didn't need to do another rate increase until 2022. So we did a 2% increase in 2022, and we did a 3% increase in 2023. So very few rate increases over that, over the last 10 years. You'll see down on the bottom in that square, just for reference, those are our assessment fee increases. So different from our user fees, those are our assessment fees that we charge for new development. We're not proposing an increase to those this year, but we are looking at them next year. There's very specific things that can be included in those formulas. But we evaluate those every 3 years to determine if we need to increase those fees. So that will be next year, but just for some context, we also have not done very many increases there. So a couple of notable things that are happening in FY25 in the enterprise fund. The first is our fund split. So this is something that we've been working on with finance for many years. And really, it just keeps the enterprise fund cleaner. So it separates the water and the sewer. And so water rates pay solely for water expenses, sewer rates pay solely for sewer expenses. So this is a best practice. It just keeps the finances really clean, and it's been a recommendation. And so we're excited to move forward with that with finance in FY25. So our funds will split. We are sunsetting the EPA fee in October. Something that's really, I think this is a huge win for the city. Like I mentioned, it did exactly what it needed to do. It paid for the significant capital costs that were associated with our NPDES permit. And not very often in government do they say fees are going to go away and then they actually go away. So I think that's something to be really proud of. And so that fee is sunsetting. However, we do have continued rises in operational costs, wages, chemicals, equipment, supplies, power. So we do need to look at a small rate increase to still maintain those operational expenses. And really our philosophy is to do small rate increases over time rather than large fluctuations. It seems like that's a better approach. So the proposal that I'm bringing forward to
tonight is a 3% rate increase that would go towards both the base and the use. So these are all the components that somebody would see on their utility bill. So base is a charge that everybody gets charged, whether you use 1 gallon or 20,000 gallons. Everybody gets charged that flat rate. Use charge is based off of actual use. So you'll see that's based off of per 1,000 gallons, you get charged that amount. The EPA fee, like I mentioned, is coming off, and then trash and recycling rates, you'll also see those on your utility bill. We aren't talking about those tonight. Those are a little bit of a separate process that happen through our contract with Republic Services. They are presenting those to us shortly. Those run through SWAC and then eventually make their way here too. But today we're just talking about the city components for the water and the sewer base. So you'll see the impacts there. And the actual impact on the monthly customer or the average customer is a monthly decrease of about $1.90. And even with that 3% increase, because that EPA fee is dropping off. So why do we need the 3% increase? So we have a rate model that we run with finance that looks at all of our revenues that come in, all of our operational expenses, and all of our big capital expenses. And what we try to do is we try to maintain solvency for at least the 5-year period. And I don't want you to panic when you see this graph go below 0. Todd doesn't panic, I don't panic, because it's not really the actual of what's going to happen. This is a very conservative graph. It usually forecasts lower revenues. It also forecasts very conservative expenditure rates, which are usually higher than what we actually see. So really, finance and the enterprise fund, we really try to just focus on those first 5 years. And this graph ends up usually looking better than what's presented. But with the 3%, you'll see it does push our solvency out just a little bit. But you will see it does drop below 0 in the further out years. And what that tells you is that if we do 3% this year, we likely will have to do another rate increase sometime in the next several years. If you look at our water model, so one other thing too is this line doesn't include our emergency revenue. So our emergency fund. So we have about $10 million that we're mandated to hold in emergency. So this we don't really truly hit 0. We have some emergency funding in there. So this is our water side of the rate model. You'll see we lose solvency a little bit faster. One of the reasons on that is the sewer rates are about, the proportional amount is about double than the water rates. So it takes a lot less on the sewer side to collect more, if that makes sense. So if you use 1,000 gallons of water, it's about $8 that we collect from you. If you used 1,000 gallons of sewer, it's about $15 that we collect from you. So what this graph tells you is that water is likely going to need more rate increases over that period than wastewater. So we may actually get to a point where we don't need to increase wastewater rates anymore, but we do need to do some more increases on the water side. Good news all around though, these are looking like very small rate increases over this time period to make everything solvent. So the 3% on the water side, again, just like the wastewater side, pushes your solvency out just a little bit further, but within that 5-year range. So we feel comfortable with that. So I know that we don't always like to do comparisons, and all cities have different challenges and regulations and growth pressure, but I think it can be helpful to really show our customers the premier value that we're getting with Meridian's water and wastewater services. So we are some of the lowest rates in the valley. All of these rates have been standardized to a set. If a customer in any of these cities used 6,000 gallons of water and sewer, this is what they would pay. So this chart too doesn't contemplate that most of these agencies may also do a rate increase in FY25. So this is just where we stand today. So we would become the lowest rate in the valley, and we are about $24 a month lower on our average rate than other cities in the valley. So I think it's something to be really proud of. It takes a lot of foresight and planning and the proactive approach of save before you spend, anticipate what your big capital expenditures are. And so I think, past councils and current council have done a really good job working with us on that. So, well, our rates are some of the lowest in the valley. It's not lost on us that it can impact some of our low-income customers. So I always like to take this opportunity to include, there are two programs that are resources to our citizens. The first is a city program, and that's the Meridian Cares program. We partner with LADA, and this will pay up to $100 per year for low-income residents to go towards their water, sewer, and garbage bills. In FY '23, 91 of our customers asked for assistance through this program. And then the other program, it's not a Meridian specific program, but the Boise School District puts out a really good, excellent, they call it a self-help manual that has resources for all sorts of services. But utility assistance is included in that, and it has a whole handful of options that are not city sponsored, but other options for getting help with your utility bills. So our schedule for this is we have several opportunities throughout the remainder of the summer to reach out to our citizens. It will go out in the next two upcoming utility bills. It also gets published in the newspaper for 2 weeks. And we will hold a public hearing in late August at the 6 p.m. council meeting. And if this all goes approved through council, it would go into effect on October 1st. And so with that, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Lorelei. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
question, just a point of clarification. Very kind to talk about past and present councils, but it's you and your team that do an exceptional job that help make those decisions easily to come to that same conclusion. So I appreciate you kind of giving some bus accolades, but it's a good opportunity to give you and your team some great accolades for your ongoing great work. We appreciate you bringing this. I know rate increases are never a topic that anybody gets excited about, but I appreciate you including the comparison. And I agree, everybody's different, but it does paint a good picture for the continued value that our citizens get. Thank you for doing that.
Thank you very much. Okay, up next is item 23. Councilman
Mayor?
Cavanagh.
If it's okay, I'm going to go down to the podium.
Yep.
Great. There we go. There's some people smiling. We get to do this, guys. Mayor, council, thanks for the chance to get in front of you. As we've got some new members of council, I know that the topic of, I've got a question about a city policy, maybe something I want to enact, maybe something I want to take away, maybe something I want to modify, that tends to come up. And we don't have a real formalized process about how we go about doing that. And so when this came up, I thought this would be a good opportunity just to kind of walk through kind of how we have done things, just in case there's something that interests you. But also this came about because some members of our police department reached out after a tragedy with the county and said, is there an opportunity or a willingness for the city council and the city to do something more? So what I'm before to talk to you a little bit about today is related to an email that I sent you recently talking about expanding benefits for an employee should they lose their life in the line of duty. Now, I know we have a really great time here in the city and in our community. And I love that we've got great employees that just really, really care about our community. This is a little bit of a serious topic. And so I want to really thank our Human Resources Department, Mayor's Office, and our CFO for helping to give me some guidance. So what I thought I would do first is just go over with all of you what the city currently does if somebody who works for us passes away, whether it's in their role as an employee or they experience some other tragic event in their home. So currently the city provides, and I put this, I think, all in the email that I sent you, but just in case you missed it, $50,000 life benefit. So any employee, $50,000. If that employee passes away within the capacity of their work, they get a $50,000 accidental death benefit that may be paid depending on the situation of the death. The city then can also expand the COBRA benefits up to 36 months, but we don't pay any of that portion. It's up to the employee or their family to cover those costs. And then we pay out vacation as we would normally do when an employee were to leave the city. In addition to that, that's what the city does. Should a death in employment capacity occur, the state through the Industrial Commission provides a workman's comp benefit. There's a formula that goes into that. It can be paid up to 50 weeks for as little as $300 a week up to $500 a week. If the employees are PERSI eligible, their PERSI is paid out to their designee, whether that's a spouse, child, et cetera. Again, not through the city, done through the state. PERSI also provides a $100,000 benefit for our police and firefighters through PERSI. So again, not administered through the city, administered for PERSI for two separate employee classes. And then Debbie shared this with me that the Department of Justice also provides a public safety officers benefit program that can pay up to a little over $430,000. Now, there's an investigation to what resulted in that death. They ultimately make all of those determinations. Those three that I shared with you are not ran through the city. Those are run through other forms of government separate from us. And in many cases, don't cover all of our employees. When the tragic situation happened in the counties, members of our police department reached out and said, would you be open to having a conversation about expanding that? And I said I would, but that I really felt it was important to look at this for all of our employees. So what I sent you last night is, I think, just step 1A, which is the council open to having this conversation? If so, there is some very basic language of what a policy would look like, which essentially would say, this is what we would do for all city employees if they're killed while performing their duties as a city employee. What that amount is, I think, is up for conversation. And then the separate piece is, would the city entertain covering those health insurance benefits for the employee for a predetermined amount of time? Done a little bit of digging. I believe City of Boise and Ada County, if an employee dies while in the line of duty, the city or the county will just pay their insurance benefits up to 30, they'll pay it for the full 36 months. There is, with all things that we talk about, certainly a budget element, and this would have an impact on our budget. And it's one of those things that would sit within our budget. You hope you would never have to utilize. Currently, right now, our death benefit is provided by a third-party entity. They administer that benefit, they pay it, we pay them just like we would pay for other benefits through the city. I think that if the council wants to head down a path of expanding the benefit, we would, again, from the procedure standpoint, turn it over to the administrative branch to develop the procedures to administer the policies as we see fit. So that is a high-level overview about what I'm looking to achieve. Not looking for necessarily, yes, let's go do this, let's put it on the agenda for next week, but something for you to marinate on next couple of weeks, likely bring back with something that is more formalized for a discussion at a later point in time. That said, I'm here. Are there questions that I can answer for any of you, Mr. Mayor, Council? Mr. Mayor, I know that you and your director's team met about this today. If there's any context or insight that you'd want to provide as well, happy. I think that's important for all of us to hear as well.
Thank you. Well, I think we're here for 2 years today to hear what council's viewpoints are. We did talk about as directors, but I think it's, we'll start with what council's prerogative is, and to your point, because there is some administrative stuff. There's also tax implications if the city wants to do it versus go through a third party. But we're here to listen.
Okay.
And then based on that feedback and our conversation, we can have an appropriate dialogue on what we think as a executive branch would be an appropriate benefit proposal.
Thanks, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Little Roberts.
Mr. Mayor, Luke, thank you very much for bringing this up. I'm definitely in support of a continuing conversation here. Just not to be picky, but at one point you used the word died while working versus killed. Two different
Yeah.
meanings.
Yeah, I would always look to our legal counsel to help me in terms of definitions. I would look at this, that if it employs performing their role within the city and as a result, their life ends, that's how I would classify this, whether it is the actions of an individual or a thing, to me, it's important that we look at this not just for our police and fire emergency responders who have a very, very dangerous, incredibly important job, but it's also about all of our employees. I think, I don't know if Lorelai's left, but our Public Works Department performs in many aspects a very, very dangerous job. I have worked here on shut-off day, and it can be a scary time for our employees. We're fortunate that we've got a great team that has de-escalated situations. All right, these are the things that I'm sure all of you stay up at night thinking about, the whatabouts, and you hope that we never have to confront with all those. And certainly, if we leave this as is or we change, doesn't bring anybody back that's important to us. This is just, I think, a important way for, and I want to commend our CFO as he and I were talking about this. He said it best. These are our people, and we should be taking care of our people. And I think that this city has done a really admirable job of being really mindful of our employees. You know, this is, when I was an employee here, is the only organization I've ever worked at where they said, if you get into a car accident while you're on vacation, the city is going to provide monetary compensation to your family. As an employee, that's a big deal. And I've worked for other organizations since, and none of them do that. So I like that this is that has been a first step. To me, I think though there is an opportunity for us to do more, and that's why I'm bringing this today.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilwoman Schrader.
Yeah, definitely interested in having the conversation. I think it's a really worthwhile topic. I think paying for the COBRA premiums is a really important component of it. I think almost, if not more important than the death benefit. Particularly, because people's families rely on those benefits, and that seems like one we should look at. The one piece for me, I think that we just owe it to ourselves to try to figure out is whether we should continue paying a third party to do it, or does it make sense for the city to self-insure, these death benefits, if they're expanded or not. But I think we need to look at that and kind of get some history on, on average, how many employees die? What do we think the total is that the city could be on the hook for? And I think you mentioned some of that, but if you wanted to walk us through that really quick.
Happy to do it, Councilman Strader, thanks. And I think you bring up a really good question, something I appreciate. I think the mayor and probably our human resource department, Debbie's here too, to answer any kind of administrative questions that you may have. Is that I would come back to whatever is the best path for our employees is the one that I would want to, pursue. So to that point, as I understand, at least as believed right now, is if the city were to hold those funds and then provide it to an employee, there'd be significant tax implications that would significantly reduce the benefit that can be provided to the employee versus an insurance policy that's administered via third party would not necessarily have those tax implications. Now, listen, we're at step one here, and I appreciate the mayor, our HR and finance department moving wheels quickly to be able to get some of these questions answered. As is often the case with these big things, you answer one question, but you get three more. So I'm committed to working with our CFO, mayor's office, HR, and our department directors to make sure that whatever recommendation we come back with in terms of how it's administered, it's what's best for our employees.
Yeah, and just to touch on that, one of the little things, it's kind of like we're self-funded for health, but we still have a relationship with Blue Cross, and they still perform a function and a duty, and it's valuable for us compared to us doing all the work ourselves. Similarly, and I look at it this, I'm not saying this is the answer, but I have asked the team to go sit down with our current provider and have a conversation if there's a relationship that can exist in a similar way where we take on the one side of it. But to the point, let's just say $100,000, the city says we're going to do that. 50,000 that goes to the government because it impacts taxes. I'd rather give our employees 75,000 and an insurance provider 25 than 50,000 to the federal government for the same dollar
Same
figure.
outcome, yeah.
So those type of conversations are what will ensue to see what type of changes, if any, can make sense or not. And we can work on those type of things, but those are the implications we know.
Mr. Mayor,
That's what I'm sure.
do you just mean in terms of, at the end of the day, we all file our taxes, and you may get taxed on a one-time payment at a higher rate, but
Correct.
as opposed to an annuity, and then you're treating it as more of an ordinary income.
Yeah, and that's what according to our CFO, this would, if we paid this benefit in our current scenario, it's an income-based dollar figure to the individual compared to annuity, which is not. And so,
And Mr. Mayor,
Councilman
if I'm
Cavan.
not mistaken, that would be more of a procedural element. This is the council has set the policy about what we want to do, and then the administrative side, the procedure side would determine how it would be implemented. Correct?
I mean, yes, I mean, I think it's all relative to what's in the policy, though.
Okay.
The policy were to say we want to spend $200,000 per death towards somebody for COBRA and other benefits. Yes, we could determine how to do that, but at the same time, what's the end result that we want? What's best for the employees? And that's what we want to get to in those conversations. So we touched on some of this, but we don't have the answers as to what's an appropriate way. And can we work with a third party effectively to achieve that same goal where we take on the cost, the unknown cost? It's like say, well, we have historical data from three deaths over a 10-year period. Well, we could have 4 deaths next year. And, very soon what you think is a historical number that says it's cheaper to do it one way becomes more expensive. But if we're willing to take on those risks at that time, that's a different equation into this. And maybe our insurance provider would say, yeah, you guys will pay out the full cost. And here's why it makes sense to work with us on this compared to paying a tax. But those are the conversations.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
a quick follow-up. I'm fully supportive of this discussion and moving forward with the two parts that you presented. First being the 36 months of COBRA. I think we should be there already. We're not, but I think in this process, we can probably get there. Secondarily, I really like the idea of a citywide death benefit, but I would, at this point, I'd only want to be supportive of it if the amount we're saying we're going to give them is the amount that gets given to them.
Fair. I think, Mr. Mayor, well put, Councilmember Overton. I think the mayor touched on that. We want as much of the financial benefit to benefit the families as opposed to going to a third-party entity or the government. That's, I think, ultimately what's going to impact the family the most should be kind of our North Star to a degree. Great. So, Mr. Mayor, I think next steps, I'll have some continued conversations with all of you. You've got a very rough draft version of the policy. One of the things what I love about council is that we all have our own path to get to the right idea. So I would encourage your feedback, suggestions. It sounds like that there is some desire for us collectively to look at this. So challenge me as to the best way to do that. And we'll continue to work together and in a number of weeks, maybe come back with a policy for a more fleshed out version for deliberation. Great. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, up next, item 24, standard operating policy discussion, grant application, administrative policy. And, Todd, you can also talk about any of the other items that were up there tonight if you want.
We're good, Mayor. Again, I appreciate you allowing us to talk about this. On June 27th, we provided you, council, a brief overview of what changed between the old policy and the new policy. And I don't have a presentation for you. I'm here to possibly answer any questions that were not answered via the email string on June 27th. So myself, anybody, we're all here to answer any outstanding questions that you may have.
Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I don't have any outstanding questions, but I appreciated that information and just sort of taking a moment to understand the changes and why they were being made. So yeah, I appreciate that. It feels like this will further standardize our approach to these. And I think it kind of get some guardrails around what we're doing. So I appreciate you bringing it forward.
You're correct. Yeah, we're just trying to clean up a little bit of language, make it more understandable for all.
Council, any additional questions? All right,
Thank you.
thank you. The next item up is item 25 versus resolution number 24-2460. Ask the clerk to read this resolution by title.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The resolution of City Council of the City of Meridian to amend City of Meridian Standard Operating Policy 9.8 regarding grant management and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Council, you've heard this resolution read. Does anybody like it read further? Or do I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
all the good discussion and work, appreciate it. I move that we approve resolution number 24-2460.
I have a motion, a second, to approve resolution number 24-2460. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The resolution is agreed to. Council, we're at the end of our meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
we adjourn our work session.
Motion adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned. Council will call this meeting to order. For the record, it is June 9th, 2024 at 6:01 PM. We'll begin this regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilman Cavanagh,
Here.
Councilwoman Little Roberts, Councilman Overton,
Here.
Councilman Whitlock,
Here.
Councilwoman Strader, Mayor Simonson.
Here. Next up is the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please rise and join us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, liberty and justice.
Correct. We didn't have anyone sign up under community invocation, correct?
We did not.
Okay, so with that, we'll move on to adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
no changes this evening, so I move that we adopt the agenda as presented.
Second.
Have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Mr. Clark, anyone signed up under public forum?
Mr. Mayor, no signups.
Okay, then we will move right on to our action items for this evening. First item up is a public hearing continued from April 9th, 2024 for Roslyn subdivision H 2023-0056. We will continue this public hearing with comments from staff.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. The applicant is here to present their project once again for annexation and a combined preliminary final plat. So the original plat consisted of 3 lots, and now they are 6 lots, and now they are proposing 3 lots. This is the revised plan that they sent for us all to look at this evening. And written testimony since the last hearing from May 14th is from Ken Freeze. And he just had concerns with the house placement on the west. There is a big walnut tree on the corner, and he would like to see that preserved. As well as he would recommend that the applicant build wider driveways to accommodate 3 vehicles. However, staff does analyze that with the building permit based on the amount of bedrooms. And one last thing, if City Council chooses to move to approve this revised plat, there is a condition in the staff report in section IX A2 that needs to be revised to read, the applicant shall submit a complete set of engineer plans with the final plat application submitted for the city engineer's signature. And that concludes staff's presentation tonight for this project, and I'll leave it to the applicant.
Thank you, council. Any questions for staff? Okay, then would the applicant like to come forward? Elizabeth.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and City Council. We are here again on Roslyn. I have a very brief presentation this evening. With me tonight, Elizabeth Keckeritz, 601 Bannock with Gibbons Pursley Land Use Council. I'm here with Brett and Julie Bingham, the owners of the property this evening. And we are back tonight with a 3-lot subdivision. 2 of the lots are accessed off of a common drive, which means there's just fewer accesses directly onto Roslyn. It also puts the garages further back away from the street. Generally speaking, garages are the least attractive portion of any home, and so it's nice to keep them away. The lots all come in at approximately 10,000 square feet, some a little more, some a little less. And the lots now actually at this size do meet our 4-dimensional standards. And so tonight we are just looking for approval of the annexation and the combined preliminary and final plat.
Thank you, council. Any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Strader.
not a question, just a comment. What a fantastic revision. I think it looks great. Just a general comment. I so appreciate the flexibility and how you approached this, and feels like a good amount of homes for this area.
Okay, thank you very much. Clerk, do we have anybody sign up on this item?
Mr. Mayor, Ken Freeze.
Thank you once again, council members. This has been a long process, and I have to say, while I'm relieved to see three lots there, I am also a little disappointed that apparently they will not be building on those lots. I hope that we're not back here a year from now with some new owners who are trying to do something to those lots that will not fit the neighborhood, because I think building 3 homes on the 3 lots would be very fitting for what the rest of the neighborhood has right now. And as I requested in my letter, that one home looked a little forward, but then I was informed that apparently those were just sort of place markers for what might be there, nothing that would be there as a final building. Also in my letter, I did request that if they were going to be built, that just, if nothing else, wider driveways would be put there, because with the HOA that's just to the east of there is a problem with cars often parking in the street because there's not enough room for them to park in their driveways. And as the fire department has stated before, that a lot of times these common driveways become parking lots when they should be clear. Those were my only 2 comments. I have to also say that I know for the Binghams, this has been a long, drawn-out process. It hasn't been easy for anybody. I can tell you that the president of the HOA has been extremely stressed out about this, to the point where she's almost been ill over it. And I know some other people have been very stressed out about this whole process. I hope that whatever comes of this property in the near future, it still looks sort of what we see in this plat now, and not something something grotesque that say some new owners of those lots may want to build there. I've also happy to be able to tell the people that I've been dealing with that the city council does listen to the citizens. Some of the naysayers who were saying that there's no point in it, I'm glad that you proved them wrong, that you do listen to the people, and that it is worth stating what they feel when they feel that, instead of waiting until it's all done and saying, oh, they wouldn't have listened to us anyway. So once again, thank you to all the council members and mayor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Council, any questions?
Mr.
Ken?
Ken?
Mr. Freeze? You got a question? Councilman Overton.
Welcome
Yes,
back.
go ahead.
Just a clarification. You stated that the houses are not going to be built?
That's my understanding, that these are just going to be surveyed. I mean, you can ask them for clarification, but my question was initially why this was put down. There was no new elevations or anything. I got basically a preliminary answer. I was hoping I'd get a better answer tonight, but that apparently they were not planning on building now, but they were just going to subdivide. Again, I would say ask them for some clarification on that. I would like to see it built. I'd like to see them complete the project, but on the other hand, I realize this has been an expensive process for them. And honestly, I've hated to see them have to go back to the drawing board over and over again, because I know it always costs them money. And I don't like to see anybody waste money.
We agree with that. Thank you.
Mr. Clerk, do we have anybody else sign up?
Mr. Mayor, that was everyone.
Okay, if there's anybody present that would like to provide testimony, either online or in the room, if you'd like to come forward at this time. Good evening. Say your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Jan Larea, 100 East Roslyn, Meridian. Mr. Mayor and Council, I have no objection to 3 houses or 3 lots being built in that area. It would look better than what happens to be there now. So no objections from me. I complained before, so now I'm saying it's fine. Any questions?
Thank you, Jen. Is there anybody else who'd like to provide testimony on this item? Would the applicant like to come forward to close?
Mayor, City Council, Elizabeth Kekritz, Givens Pursley. Just one comment in response to Council Overman's question and Mr. Freeze's comments. The Binghams intend to take this to final plat, and at this point, they don't know if after it is officially subdivided into the 3 lots, if they will move forward with building on those lots, or if they will be selling the lots for individuals to do their own development on it. But they do absolutely intend to take this through to final.
Council, any additional questions? All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Whitlock.
I was just appointed to the council on May 28th, and there were 2 hearings on this issue, one in April and one in early May, both of which I viewed and have reviewed the record as well. So if there's no objection, I feel comfortable participating in the discussion and vote tonight.
Excellent, thank you. Council, any questions, discussion on that?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Strader.
if there's no further questions or discussion, I move that we close the public hearing.
Second.
Have motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Strader.
I would be very happy to make a motion for approval. After considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of I move to approve file H 2023-0056 as presented in the staff report for the hearing date today of July 9th, with the modifications as suggested by planning staff in section 9A2 to require a revised complete set of engineering plans with the modifications that were in the slide.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the motion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts.
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Whitlock.
All ayes, motion carries, and the item is agreed to. Thank you very much and good luck. With that, we'll move on to item 2, which is a public hearing for 2 Mustard Seeds Women Resale Shop, H 2024-009. We will open this public hearing with staff comments from Linda.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. So tonight, we are here, the applicant is requesting a rezone of 0.63 acres of land from the R8 to OT zoning district for the purpose of converting the existing home into a women's resale retail store. So the proposed 2,463 square foot retail store will be located in the downtown area within the Meridian Urban Renewal District. The home was built in 1902 and is slated for further improvements to meet city code requirements and enhance the customer experience. Remodel will include handicap bathroom access and ramps for store access, as well as new flooring, paint, landscape, and other minor interior makeovers. Access will be off of Northwest First Street, and parking with handicap stall will be at the back of the retail store. Walk-in handicap ramps will provide access to the front door. There will be 5 off-street parking spaces as part of this proposal. The proposed hours of operation will be from Wednesday to Saturday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The city may require a development agreement in conjunction with the rezone pursuant to Idaho Code Section 67-6511A, but due to the size of the development, staff believes that a DA should not be required. There are existing sidewalks along North Meridian Road and North First Street. And there's existing landscaping along Meridian Road, and so no additional landscape will be required for buffers, except for buffers to these adjacent residential uses if needed. So as you can see here, these are pictures of the existing property. It's actually a beautiful home, piece of property. I walked the property, walked along it. And it's gonna be a really nice addition to the neighborhood, this resale store. And at this time, I will let the applicant come up and provide any information that she would like to.
Okay, thank you. Council, any questions for staff? All right, would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Arlene Hardy, and my address is 2484 East Summer Dawn Street in Meridian. Well, thank you for having us here again this evening. On behalf of Expansion International, I'd like to say how excited we are and how happy we are to be part of downtown Meridian and to bring this property. It's a beautiful old house, as you just saw, and be able to bring this property into a store. And the store will be a resale store for women. It's going to be a boutique type store. We're very excited that women in the area can come and shop here, as well as volunteers in the area will be able to come and volunteer at the store. So our goal is to preserve the beauty of this old house, 120-year-old house, which is in very good shape. And our goal is to preserve that beauty and the history of the house, while still bringing a fun shopping experience into the area. We think it will bring shoppers to the downtown area, and people passing through Meridian will be able to see what a great asset this is. We're looking forward to being part of Meridian downtown and working with the city and working with the people in the area. And we just want to say thank you for reviewing our proposal and for having us here this evening. And I'm just here to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant?
I don't have any.
All right, thank you. Clerk, I assume we didn't have everyone sign up, or did we?
We do,
Oh.
besides the applicant, Jean Bennett.
Okay. Good evening. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Gene Bennett, 4210 North Rogue Riverway in Meridian. As a volunteer, helping them with the construction, and so if you had any questions regarding the construction, I would stand for those this evening.
Thank you.
That's easy.
Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor, that was everyone.
Okay, is there anybody present who did not sign up that would like to come forward and present testimony? Okay. Would the applicant like to make any final comments, or does the applicant waive any final comments? Applicant waives final comments. Council, your direction.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
seeing as there's no further comments, move we close the public hearing.
Second.
I have a motion second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Overton.
considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to recommend approval of file number H 2024-0009.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Do I have discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh,
Aye.
Little Roberts,
Aye.
Overton.
Aye.
Strater, Whitlock.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carried, and the item is agreed to. Good luck. Council, the next item up this evening is a public hearing for Vanguard Village subdivision H 2023-0074. We will open this public hearing with staff comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. The next application before you tonight is a request for a development agreement modification for Vanguard Village. This site is governed, the overall site is governed by the existing development agreement consisting of 115.26 acres of land zoned R15, ME, CC, and HE, and is generally located a quarter-mile south of West Franklin Road and west of South 10 Mile Road. The existing development agreement was approved in 2021 and replaced the original development agreement required with annexation of the property. The comprehensive future land use map designations are mixed-use commercial, medium high-density residential, mixed employment, and high-density employment. The portion of the property that is the subject of the amended DA is only that at the southwest corner of the site in the ME zoning district, and that is this area right here where my pointer is. The applicant proposes the following amendments to the existing development agreement. Number 4.3 is a new provision that they're proposing, is a restriction on the uses allowed on the eastern portion of the ME zoned area. And that is, as shown here on the map in the green, to not allow warehouse, including distribution and flex space use. The inclusion of this restriction on approximately a third of the mixed employment zoned area will ensure the property develops with a mix of employment uses as desired by the city, with a limitation on flex and warehouse uses. The next one is a modification to DA provision 5.1A. It includes reference to updated phasing plan, and a new phasing plan is included as an exhibit. So this is the existing phasing plan on the left and the proposed phasing plan on the right. With the proposed phasing plan, Phase A, the first phase, is at the southwest corner of the site. Directly to the east will be the second phase, and the last and third phase will be the northern portion of the site. The reason for the change is that development priorities have changed along with property ownership since the time of the initial approvals. The proposed change will allow development to proceed in an alternate order. The next change is inclusion of alternative design and development guidelines for the distribution and light manufacturing area, i.e. the warehouse, distribution, and light industry and manufacturing uses on the western portion of the ME zoned area per the conceptual elevations shown, and modification to the following development agreement provisions. 5.1B currently requires compliance with the design guidelines in the 10 Mile Plan and the standards in the Architectural Standards Manual as applicable. The modification allows for alternatives to the design guidelines if approved by council tonight. Modification to number 5.1I. The proposed modification allows for exceptions to the design guidelines in the 10 Mile Plan for the ME zoned area, where warehouse, including distribution, and light industry, including manufacturing, uses are proposed on the western portion of the ME zoned area. The exceptions consist of a minimum of 8% windows on the frontage and a single plane wall maximum distance of 150 feet without building modulation, instead of 20% windows and a single plane wall maximum equal to the building height without building modulation, as shown on the examples submitted with this application as shown. Only the building faces shown in red on the exhibit on the left will be considered frontage. The 10 Mile Plan has elevated guidelines that apply to development within the 10 Mile area. The Architectural Standards Manual applies to all properties within the city with established baseline minimum standards. These are in addition to the elevated guidelines in the 10 Mile Plan. The front and south side of the southernmost building will be highly visible from I-84. The front of the other buildings will be internal to the site and not as visible. Staff is unable to support requests for deviations from the guidelines in the plan due to conflicts with the lesser Architectural Standards Manual standards apart from and prior to the design review process. Commercial Architectural Standards Manual standards apply to ME zoned areas, but the buildings are of an industrial style and may conflict with other citywide ASM standards as well. Action is needed from council for such requests. If council approves the proposed deviations to the design guidelines in the plan, the applicant will need to include a request for a design standard exception with each commercial standard in the architectural standards manual that is not met, with subsequent administrative design review applications. Any such related request will likely not comply with the design standards in the ASM. The next provision proposed for modification is 5.1L. The proposed modification allows for exceptions to the design elements in the 10-mile plan if approved by council tonight. Modification to DA provision 5.1M. The proposed modification allows the applicant to submit a certificate of zoning compliance and building permit application prior to recordation of the final plat, but requires the plat to be recorded prior to issuance of certificate of occupancy. Currently, the requirement is for the plat to be recorded prior to submittal of a certificate of zoning compliance and/or building permit applications. The proposed change will allow development to commence, but will still require the plat to be recorded prior to occupancy. Staff is recommending approval of the requested modifications to the development agreement, except for the deviations from the design guidelines in the 10-mile plan, which I mentioned, which require council approval. No written testimony has been submitted on this application. The applicant is here to present tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Sonia. Council, any questions for staff? Okay, would the applicant like to come forward? Good evening.
Both of these things on. Will Gooda, 8665 West Emerald Street, Boise. Work with Adler Industrial.
Yes, give me just a moment here, please. There you go.
Weird for you guys as well. Cross our fingers here. Thank you, Council, Mayor, Sonia. At Adler, we are really excited about this project. So anyway, thanks for the chance to be here and present on it. A little background on Adler. We are the biggest industrial developer in the Treasure Valley. We really pride ourselves on our partnerships with cities and communities, and we own or manage about 20, well, it's not about 20 buildings in Meridian right now. We've got 3 more under construction, including the new Tesla Sales Center, which I'm particularly excited about. It's exciting in the industrial world, about as exciting as it gets for me. And 3 more in design at the moment. So love being a part of the Meridian community, and thanks for everything you guys do as part of that. A little background on this project. So some of you might have been part of this background, but like Sonia said, there's an existing development agreement. We purchased part of this property last year, and now we're here to just make a few minor adjustments to the development agreement so we can move forward with developing the property. As shown in this image, the 115 acres covered by this development agreement is controlled by 3 different developers and going to be developed by 3 different developers. Corey Barton's going to develop the residential 40 acres on the north. BVA is going to develop the commercial high-density employment and part of the mixed employment zone on the east side, and Adler is going to develop the 20 acres of mixed employment on the west side of the site. We are working very closely with BVA to ensure a smooth transition from the commercial uses over at 10 Mile and 10 Mile Crossing over to the industrial uses over at Black Cat with large warehouses over there. And we think that this project does a really good job of a smooth transition there. So zooming in on Adler's 20 acres that we're going to develop, you can see the original development agreement site plan and our current site plan, which are nearly identical. Apologize for all the capitalization and then lowercase. It's driving me crazy. I hope you guys can look past it because that's not what mine looked like. So you can see that the plans are nearly identical. We did put the slightly larger building in the middle of the site, interior to the site, as opposed to up against the freeway, but that's really the only change there. The current site plan is designed to be highly demisable. So you can see on the north-hand side that there's two small flex buildings that can accommodate, divide into 4 different tenant spaces and accommodate tenants as small as 3,800 square feet. The next 2 buildings can accommodate tenants as small as 4,700 square feet. Then you have the larger building, which can demise into 6 spaces down to 21,000 square feet. And then finally, the building along the freeway, which can demise down into 16,000 square foot spaces. So the goal really for this project is that you can get a small business into one of the flex buildings, and they can grow as their business grows and stay within the park and move into bigger spaces. The first item, that was kind of all background, getting into the actual DA amendment. The updated phasing plan is really having to do with the different developers involved at this point, simplifying that phasing plan a little bit from where it was. We do have the industrial as part of phase A, the first phase here. Oh, and we are already installing infrastructure for the entire project. You might have seen us working out there in conjunction with BVA, installing a lot of sewer. We're hoping to have the roads paved by the end of the year. Jumping into the design guidelines that Sonia mentioned. So while the original DA specifically lists distribution and light manufacturing as examples of intended uses for the mixed employment zone, it doesn't address the design requirements for these buildings. It does show elevations and renderings for other buildings, but not for any of the mixed employment buildings. So first, to get you oriented on the site here, on the northern side of our 20 acres is going to be Vanguard Way, which will be a public road. On the east side of our site is La Vista, which is a private road. On the west side of this site, Corey Barton actually owns another property that he has plans for an industrial development there. And then on the south edge of the site is I-84. So the northernmost 2 buildings, we are not proposing any changes to design requirements. Those will be designed to meet the 20% windows and all the requirements in the 10-mile plan. We recognize that those buildings are facing public right-of-way. There's residential to the north, so we want to keep those smaller buildings without any kind of design changes. The 3 out of the 4 faces that we're proposing some design changes in the middle of the site are facing interior to the site and facing each other, so not highly visible outside of the actual park here. And then the last face that we're proposing some design changes is the southern face that faces the freeway. Zooming in on that freeway frontage there will be a 50-foot wide landscape buffer on the west end of the site, and it's about 100 feet on the east side of the site. That'll be fully lined with trees on both sides of a walkway, and there's actually 85 trees along the south edge of the site there. And the way that this site works, so these trees are 50 feet tall when they're mature. The building we have proposed here is going to be about 32 feet tall. And the building actually sits down about 15 feet from the freeway, just because of the topography of the site. So trying to create the visual that you have 50-foot tall trees that are starting from a higher point than a 32-foot tall building, which is down lower. So we expect to get a really good visual screen from all these trees. In addition, these trees are 40 feet wide at maturity. They're staggered, and so that as you can see in this rendering, all the canopies end up interlocking and create a full visual barrier. There's also a mix of deciduous and evergreen trees here to create visual barrier even in the winter months. So with that said, jumping into maybe the nitty gritty of the single plane wall ask or request here. So you can see in this design, which is the building we're currently building in Boise, the single plane max wall distance is about 150 feet. This allows us to locate the architectural elements around the building entries, which is where we want the focal points to be. To me, in my opinion, it results in a more clean and intentional design. Here's what a design looks like when that meets the 10-mile specific area plan, where the single plane max wall distance is equal to the building height. You end up every 30 feet having to pop a panel out and step it up a little bit, which can look a little random. It can look a little castle-ish, I've heard it called. The pop outs don't necessarily follow the architecture of the building. They're rather there just to check a box and to meet a requirement, and they can often distract from the building entries as opposed to enhance the building entries as a focal point. So we would request that we increase that single plane max distance to 150 feet. The windows is the other ask here for a design change on those 4 facades. So first, the 10-mile specific plan calls for 20% windows, but it doesn't clarify if those windows are calculated based on square footage or based on linear footage. And this makes a very significant difference. Again, that same building that I used as an example in the last photos, this is a calculation both ways. If you take the window square footage, which is in blue, and divide by the total building square footage for that face of the building, on this building we have a little over 8% windows. If you do that based on linear footage, which is the green, the width of the window, which is shown in green, versus the overall length of the building, 678 feet, then that's 33.6% based on a linear basis. So hugely different. And that's why because our buildings tend to be tall, which skews the different calculations. So if the requirement is enforced based on square footage, and that's how we assumed it would be, I've actually had different jurisdictions interpret it both ways. But that's where we're requesting the 8%. If it's enforced based on linear footage, then we can meet the 20%, and there's no need for a reduction there. So that's maybe a clarifying item. So talking a little bit about the functionality of windows in an industrial building, so that I can articulate why having 20% based on square footage is problematic in this style of building. So based on our experience, the majority of tenants want a 1,500 to 4,000 square foot office, and we try to build these buildings to be as versatile as possible. So you can see in this image that what that does is across your frontage you have an office area and then an industrial area next to it, and then potentially you have a demising wall and you have the other tenant's industrial area and an office area, and it switches use across the front of the building. The reason this is important is that windows are very different in the office area versus the industrial area. In the industrial areas of the buildings, tenants don't want low windows. Having low windows are seen as a security risk. They don't want people to be able to see into their industrial area or easily break into that area. They're also seen as a liability. Windows are easily damaged and they break and they make a mess. And I can tell you since we manage and own all of our properties, our property management team constantly gets calls about people damaging and breaking anything that is possible to damage and break in one of these spaces. In the last couple of years, we've had multiple steel building columns that are rammed so hard by a forklift or equipment that they're not structurally sound anymore, and we've had to replace them. The demising walls between spaces are constantly hit with forklifts, so much that it even pushes the whole wall out of the way. And we've had to install steel channels on both sides of these walls so that they don't get pushed out of the way. So having windows in the industrial area is is not liked by tenants because of security and damage concerns. So having low windows. So that's why you see just some high windows. Still, natural light is important, and locating the windows high up is much more functional. In the office area, it's totally the opposite. Like I said, the majority of tenants want a 1,500 to 4,000 square foot single story office. So typically the ceiling on that will be 10 feet high, and any windows that are higher than 10 feet are going into the void space above a ceiling. There's no natural light, there's no benefit. They get boarded up or filmed over. And actually, if anything, there's only a detriment, which is, a less energy efficient building for no real benefit. So I just wanted to show you a few examples to put the 20% in perspective to an industrial building. And so again, this is the example I've been using so far. This is 8% windows. It's an 88,000 square foot building, which is very similar to the size of the building that's going to be along the freeway there, that was approved in the DA amendment already, DA agreement already. If you just look at the entry feature, we do exceed the 20% windows at the entry feature. But like I said, because of the adjacent industrial areas, on the building as a whole, it's less than that 20%. Here's the Tesla building that we're currently finishing on Franklin here in Meridian. It is a little bit smaller building, 41,000 square feet, and it's at 9.9% windows. It's a little bit shorter building too, since it's smaller. Another example of a project that we finished last year in Boise, a larger building, 220,000 square feet. It has 8% windows on the Gowan frontage. And actually at the corner of this building, that glass is 19 feet tall, just to get us to the 8%. Just about down here. I'll skip that example, 9.5%. So in summary, I just want to remind you, we're not requesting any changes for the northern two buildings. 3 out of the 4 frontages we are requesting are facing internal to the site. And the southern building is going to have a significant tree barrier to shield views from the freeway. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Council, any questions for the applicant? Okay. I wouldn't go far because I don't know that there's a lot of other people that are going to. Correct. Do we have anybody sign up on this item?
Mr. Mayor, we do not.
Is there anybody present that would like to provide testimony on this item?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I do have a question for staff. Sonia, hi. Could you clarify the intent of the design guidelines for the 10-mile specific area plan and whether the windows were meant to be calculated on a linear square foot basis or not? I think it would be helpful for us to all understand that.
Yes. Council, I was just looking up the answer to that, and I believe it is on the linear dimension of the street level frontage is what I'm seeing so far. I'll make a correction if I'm wrong, but I had to look that up. I don't have that memorized, so.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
did you want us to circle back to it?
I believe that's the answer unless I say otherwise. I am looking just to make sure. If I see anything to the contrary, I'll make sure to know.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
sorry to beat this one to death. Would it be helpful if council, like if we believe that is the case, do you need council to clarify that an exception is not needed because it's calculated on a linear square foot basis in our final deliberations, or
I think that council should, if they believe that what the applicant is presenting is okay and you're amenable to that, then I think you should approve the applicant's request. And if it's,
Right.
you know, otherwise it doesn't matter anyway. So,
Okay.
same end result. I just confirmed with Brian, he's kind of our design review guru, and he just confirmed that it's linear. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
so I do have a question for the applicant. I apologize, I didn't catch, was it Greg?
It's Will.
Will, sorry about
Mr.
that.
Mayor, if I may interrupt again, he just told me that he had it backwards. He thinks it's square feet. So I'm going to continue to, I'm going to continue to research here and try to get a better answer for that. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
so while we're trying to tackle that and figure that out, I guess just a question for you, just to confirm, if in fact we believe the 10-mile specific guidelines are based on linear square feet, do you meet that requirement for all of the facades of your building that you were asking for an exception on?
Yes, you said linear square feet. And just to clarify, so if it's just based on linear footage, the width of the windows, then yes, we can meet 20% on all the frontages. Square footage, that's.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Schrader.
Yeah, and it sounds like based on at least the examples that you gave us, and you're obviously one of the largest, if not the largest developer of industrial here in the valley, this is typical for this property type.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. The larger a building gets, typically the less windows it has.
Yeah.
So,
Makes
yes.
sense. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just speak. I may not be the smartest person in the room, but I have to think we're here because staff informed the applicant enough times that it didn't meet the proposed viewpoint. Otherwise, I don't know why we would be asking for a modification, especially when staff said that they don't support the modification based upon the guidelines, how they've interpreted it. So, I know we're still trying to get clarification from Brian, but otherwise I don't know why we would be here if that wasn't how it was being interpreted by staff and the applicant to do an opposite. Councilman Cavanagh.
Council Vice President Strayer and I were having a very similar conversation, like trying to figure out what's the crux as to why this is before us. And I think it's important for council, if that answer would change anybody's decision, then I think that we owe it to have staff to play it out. But I'm seeing some general consensus from council about it. Maybe that answer wouldn't necessarily have a bearing on a council decision. I think that we are best to just continue to move forward.
Mr. Mayor.
Tanya.
I apologize. I didn't know this was an issue before now, or I would have had this researched and had an answer for you that was a little better than it's been. But Brian explained to me that the 10-mile plan expects multi-story, and it's intended to be of interest due to each floor. So we don't have a multi-story building here. So it's a little, it's difficult to meet that requirement with the guidelines as is for this type of building.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
I move that we close the public hearing on this item.
Before we do that, applicant has the opportunity to come forward
I
for any
apologize.
final comments, if they would like to come forward and make those.
Mr. Mayor, if I may add one more thing. If you wish tonight, you could just make them subject to the standards in the Architectural Standards Manual as well. There are standards there that apply regardless, that I mentioned before in my presentation, that would require a design standard exception if they couldn't comply with those, which is staff level and an option as well. But that is kind of an extra tier of our review as well. So thank you.
we'll get the other industrial. I did just want to, the windows is one of the requests, the wall plane is the other request. There hasn't been any questions or discussion. Make sure that wasn't forgotten. And thanks for the clarification based on the verbiage that I read in the 10-mile plan all referenced linear footage, but it didn't specifically define anything, but it makes sense if it's written for a single story, it's written for a multi-story building. We are single story building that's taller than a lot of probably average 2-story buildings. So thank you.
Council, any final questions for the applicant? Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Schrader.
with that, I move that we close the public hearing on item number 3.
Second.
A motion second to close the public hearing. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Schrader.
just to kick off some discussion, and I can make a motion. I think architectural guidelines are particularly important when we have an area that's highly visible to the public. I don't feel like that is as much of an issue here, and I actually want to compliment the applicant. I've rarely seen someone explain so succinctly and clearly why an exception to an architectural standard is needed. So thank you. I appreciate that. With that, after considering all staff, applicant, and public testimony, I move to approve file number H 2023-0072 as presented in the staff report for today's hearing date with the following provisions. Approving the applicant's proposed amendments to the existing DA, clarifying that the city council is granting a modification to the 10-mile specific area plan guidelines with respect to both the windows and with respect to the wall planes, thank you. The maximum distance of the wall planes on the facades that were specified by the applicant. Hopefully
Second.
that gets us there.
Motion and a second. Staff, any questions on that motion? Okay, is there discussion from council on the motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
Thank you, Commissioner. Just a quick clarification, and I think I see where maybe a slight error occurred. This is application 7.4, not 7.2. 7.2, I think, is the link that was provided to the applicant file. I just want to make sure that we're on the right bouncing ball with the motion.
Mr. Mayor, yes, I agree. As long as staff is in agreement.
If, I will just clarify for the record, since there was some discussion back and forth. So council, the motion is for council to approve the applicant's request for alternative design and development guidelines as shown in the exhibits submitted by the applicant, included in the staff report, and as shown here tonight. And both of their, no changes to their request. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Second agrees.
Second agrees with what we're all understanding to be the case. Okay, is there further discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Cavanagh.
Aye.
Little Roberts. Overton.
Aye.
Strader.
Aye.
Whitlock.
All ayes, motion carries, and is agreed to. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Council, we're at the end of our agenda. Anything under future meeting topics or a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
adjourn the meeting.
Motion adjourned. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.